They told me to stay silent. I chose to scream.
The crystal chandelier cast shadows across my adoptive mother's face as she delivered the words that would change everything. Jack, this is something we need to tell you. You were never really one of us. I set down my wine glass carefully, the way you handle a loaded tool. 32 years of family dinners, birthday parties, and Christmas mornings suddenly felt like an elaborate joke where I was the only one not laughing. What exactly does that mean, Mother? I kept my voice steady, though my hands were trembling slightly. Around the mahogany table, my three siblings, David, Catherine, and Robert, avoided eye contact like guilty children. My adoptive father, Harrison Blackwood, cleared his throat with the authority of a man who'd built a $31 million empire from nothing. What Margaret means, Jack, is that you're adopted. We took you in when you were 3 years old. The words hit me like a physical blow. I glanced at my wife, Evelyn, expecting support, comfort, something. Instead, she was staring at her phone, typing furiously. Her blonde hair fell forward, hiding her expression. That's quite a bombshell, I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. Any particular reason you're telling me this now? Margaret Blackwood, I couldn't think of her as my mother anymore, folded her hands primly. Because we're revising the will. The estate will be divided equally among our biological children. The room went silent, except for the ticking of the antique grandfather clock. I looked around the dining room that had been my childhood sanctuary, the oil paintings of stern ancestors who weren't my ancestors, the Persian rug where I'd played as a boy, the bay windows overlooking Lake Champlain where I'd dreamed of my future. So let me get this straight, I said, standing up slowly. You raised me for 29 years, let me call you Mom and Dad, and now you're cutting me out because I don't share your DNA? David, the eldest and always the golden boy, finally spoke up. Jack, it's nothing personal. It's just that the money should stay in the family. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that surprised even me. Nothing personal? That's rich, David, really rich. Literally. Evelyn finally looked up from her phone. Jack, maybe we should discuss this at home. Should we? I turned to face my wife of 5 years. Because you seem remarkably calm about this revelation, almost like you already knew. Her green eyes flickered, just for a second, but it was enough. She had known. My own wife had known I was adopted before I did. The papers are already drawn up, Harrison said, his voice carrying that tone of finality I remembered from childhood. You'll always be welcome here for holidays, of course. How generous. I picked up my wine glass and drained it in one gulp. 29 years of believing I belonged somewhere, and it turns out I was just a charity case with an expiration date. Margaret's face hardened. There's no need to be dramatic, Jack. We gave you a good life, a good education. You should be grateful. Grateful. I tasted the word like poison. You're right, Mother. I should be grateful that you waited until I was 32 to tell me my entire life was a lie. I walked toward the door, then turned back. By the way, that good education you gave me, I used it to become a pretty great contractor. I built half the houses in this town, including the addition on this mansion. I guess that makes us even. As I reached for the door handle, I heard Evelyn's chair scrape against the hardwood floor. Jack, wait! But I was already walking out into the cool October evening, my breath forming clouds in the crisp air. Behind me, I could hear voices, my wife's, my siblings, my parents. Former parents. I sat in my pickup truck for a long moment, staring at the mansion that had been my childhood home. The windows glowed warmly, and I could see silhouettes moving inside. They were probably already discussing how to spend their inheritance. My phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. Don't do anything stupid. We'll talk when you get home. I stared at the message, then deleted it without responding. Instead, I pulled up the contact information for Franklin Harlan, a private investigator I'd worked with on a few construction fraud cases. If my adoptive family wanted to play the family lineage game, I'd find out exactly whose DNA was running through my veins. Frank answered on the second ring. Jack Mallory, what's got you calling at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night? I need you to find my biological parents, I said without preamble. And Frank, make it quick. I have a feeling time isn't on my side. Frank Harlan's office smelled like stale coffee and cigarettes, despite the no smoking sign on the wall. The 60-year-old ex-cop looked like he'd seen everything twice and hadn't been impressed either time. Your adoption records are sealed tighter than a mob boss's lips, he said, leaning back in his creaky chair. But sealed doesn't mean gone. Give me a week. I don't have a week. I slid a check across his cluttered desk. That's double your usual rate. I need answers now. Frank raised an eyebrow at the amount. What's the rush? Your adoptive family isn't going anywhere. Maybe not, but my marriage might be. I told him about Evelyn's reaction at dinner, how she'd seemed to know about the adoption before I did. Something's not right, Frank. I can feel it. Trust your gut, he said, pocketing the check. It's usually smarter than your brain. I'll start with hospital records from 1991. If you were adopted at 3, there should be a paper trail somewhere. I left Frank's office and drove toward home, but instead of turning into my driveway, I parked across the street and watched. The lights were on in our modest 2-bedroom house, a far cry from the Blackwood mansion, but it had always felt like home. Until tonight. Through the living room window, I could see Evelyn pacing back and forth, her phone pressed to her ear. She was animated, gesturing with her free hand the way she did when she was arguing a case. Who was she talking to at 10:30 on a Thursday night? I waited 20 minutes before she hung up. Then I watched her pour herself a large glass of wine and collapse onto our couch. She looked exhausted, stressed, guilty. My phone rang. Evelyn, Jack, where are you? I've been worried sick. Have you? I kept watching her through the window. She was looking around the room as if I might materialize from the shadows. I'm just driving around, thinking. Come home. We need to talk about what happened tonight. Do we? Because you seemed pretty quiet during the whole "your life is a lie" revelation, almost like you weren't surprised. There was a pause. Through the window, I saw her run her hand through her blonde hair, a tell I'd learned to recognize over 5 years of marriage. She was about to lie. Of course, I was surprised, Jack. I had no idea. Really? Because you seemed more interested in your phone than in your husband finding out he was adopted. I was texting Lydia. She was having a crisis at work. Lydia Chen was Evelyn's best friend and fellow attorney at Morrison, Lockwood and Associates. They'd been inseparable since law school, sharing everything from clothes to secrets. If anyone knew what Evelyn was really thinking, it would be Lydia. At 9 o'clock on a Thursday night, you know how demanding our cases can be. I did know Evelyn worked 60-hour weeks at the prestigious law firm, often coming home late and leaving early. She was ambitious, driven, everything I'd fallen in love with when we met 6 years ago. But lately, those long hours had felt more like an escape than dedication. I'll be home soon, I said, and hung up. But I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to O'Malley's, a dive bar on the lake, where construction workers and fishermen went to forget their troubles. The bartender, Tommy, had known me since high school. You look like someone pissed in your beer, Tommy said, sliding a bottle of Budweiser across the scarred wooden bar. Something like that. I took a long drink and told him about the dinner, the adoption, the inheritance. Tommy listened without comment, occasionally refilling my beer. So what are you going to do? He asked when I finished. Find out who I really am? Find out why they gave me up. And then what? I stared at my reflection in the mirror behind the bar. I looked like Harrison Blackwood, or I'd always thought I did. Same dark hair, same strong jaw, same blue eyes. But maybe that was just wishful thinking. Maybe I'd been seeing what I wanted to see. Then I'm going to make them all pay for lying to me. Tommy nodded approvingly. Sounds like a plan. But Jack, be careful. Rich people don't like being messed with. They have ways of making problems disappear. I finished my beer and drove home, my head clearer than it had been in hours. Evelyn was waiting for me in the living room, still in her work clothes, a tailored black suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. We need to talk, she said. Yes, we do. I sat down across from her, studying her face. How long have you known? Known what? That I was adopted. Her green eyes widened in what looked like genuine surprise. Jack, I swear to you, I had no idea. Your parents never said anything. They're not my parents. You know what I mean? I leaned forward. Do I? Because I'm starting to think I don't know anything. About them, about you, about my own life. Evelyn reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Jack, please, don't let this come between us. So what if you're adopted? It doesn't change who you are, doesn't it? Apparently it changes whether I'm worth $31 million. You don't need their money. We're doing fine on our own, are we? I looked around our modest living room. Secondhand furniture, student loan bills on the coffee table, a mortgage that would take 30 years to pay off because your law firm friends don't seem to think so. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've seen how they look at me at office parties, the blue-collar husband who doesn't belong in their world. Evelyn's face flushed. That's not true, isn't it? When's the last time we socialized with anyone from your work? When's the last time you invited Lydia over for dinner? We have different social circles. That's normal. Different social circles, or you're embarrassed by your contractor husband? Jack, you're being paranoid. Maybe I was. Or maybe I was finally seeing clearly for the first time in years. I'm going to bed. We'll talk more tomorrow. But as I lay in the dark, listening to Evelyn's breathing beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I'd believed about my life was built on quicksand. And someone, maybe everyone, had been watching me sink. Frank called me at 6 in the morning, 3 days after our meeting. I was on a job site supervising the framing of a new house when my phone rang. Jack, you need to sit down. I'm standing on a construction site, Frank. Just tell me. Your biological father is Senator William Morrison, as in Morrison, Lockwood and Associates, as in the law firm where your wife works. The hammer slipped from my hand and clattered onto the plywood subflooring. Around me, my crew continued working, the sound of nail tools and saws suddenly seeming very far away. That's impossible. Hospital records don't lie, Jack. You were born Jonathan William Morrison on March 15, 1991. Your birth mother was Rebecca Morrison, the senator's wife. According to the records I found, you were kidnapped from your home when you were 3 years old. Kidnapped? The word came out as a whisper. The case went cold. No ransom demand, no leads, no suspects. The Morrisons hired every private investigator on the East Coast, but you just vanished. Until now. My legs felt weak. I sat down on a stack of lumber, trying to process what Frank was telling me. So the Blackwoods either found you abandoned somewhere and decided not to ask questions, or they were involved in the kidnapping. Either way, they've known who you really are for 29 years. Senator William Morrison. I'd seen him on the news, at political rallies, in newspaper articles. He was in his early 60s now, distinguished looking with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded attention. And according to Frank, he was my father. There's more, Frank continued. The Morrison family has been looking for you all these years. They never gave up hope. And Jack, they're worth about $200 million. I closed my eyes, trying to make sense of it all. Does my wife know? That's what you need to find out. Because if she's working at Morrison's firm and she knows who you really are, he didn't need to finish the sentence. If Evelyn knew I was Senator Morrison's missing son, then her behavior at the Blackwood dinner made perfect sense. She wasn't surprised by the adoption revelation because she already knew the truth. The question was, what was she planning to do with that information? Frank, I need you to find out everything you can about how the Blackwoods got me, and I need to know who else knows the truth. Already on it. But Jack, be careful. If the Blackwoods were involved in your kidnapping, they're not going to be happy about you digging into the past. I hung up and stared at the half-built house in front of me. This morning, I'd been Jack Mallory, adopted son and disinherited contractor. Now I was Jonathan Morrison, kidnapped heir to a political dynasty. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been working construction while my biological father was literally building laws. Boss, you okay? Mike Rodriguez, my foreman, was standing beside me with a concerned expression. You look like you've seen a ghost. Something like that. I stood up, brushing sawdust off my jeans. Mike, I need you to take over here for a few days. I have some family business to handle. Sure thing, everything all right at home? I almost laughed. Home. I wasn't even sure what that word meant anymore. I'm about to find out. Instead of going home, I drove to Morrison, Lockwood and Associates. The law firm occupied the top 3 floors of the tallest building in Burlington, with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking Lake Champlain. I'd been here before, for office parties and firm events, always feeling out of place among the lawyers and judges and politicians. The receptionist, a young woman with perfectly styled hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes, looked up as I approached. Mr. Mallory, what a surprise. Mrs. Mallory isn't expecting you, is she? No, she's not. Is she in? She's in a meeting with Mr. Lockwood. Would you like me to let her know you're here? Brent Lockwood was the senior partner, a man in his late 40s with the kind of smooth confidence that came from never having to worry about money. He was also, I'd noticed, particularly friendly with my wife at office functions. That's okay, I'll wait. I took a seat in the plush waiting area and studied the portraits on the walls. Founding partners, distinguished alumni, notable cases. And there, in a place of honor near the elevator, was a photograph of Senator William Morrison from his younger days, when he'd been a partner at the firm. My biological father. Jack? Evelyn's voice made me turn. She was standing in the hallway with Brent Lockwood, both of them looking surprised to see me. What are you doing here? We need to talk. I stood up, noticing how Brent's hand lingered on Evelyn's arm. Privately. Of course. Evelyn's smile was bright and professional, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Brent, we'll finish discussing the Patterson case later. Take your time, Brent said smoothly. Jack, good to see you again. I nodded but didn't shake his offered hand. There was something about the way he looked at me, like he knew a secret I didn't, or like he knew a secret I was just beginning to figure out. Evelyn led me to her office, a corner space with a view of the lake and enough legal books to stock a small library. She closed the door and turned to face me. What's so urgent that you had to come to my office? I know who my biological parents are. The color drained from her face. What? Senator William Morrison and his wife Rebecca. You know, the Morrison from Morrison, Lockwood and Associates, the firm where you work. Evelyn sat down heavily in her desk chair. Jack, that's incredible. Are you sure? Hospital records don't lie. Neither do DNA tests. I'd had Frank arrange for a rushed paternity test using samples from a water glass Senator Morrison had used at a recent public event. The results had come back an hour ago. The question is, how long have you known? Known what? Don't. My voice was sharper than I'd intended. Don't lie to me anymore, Evelyn. I'm tired of being the only person in the room who doesn't know what's really going on. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to decide how much truth she could afford to tell. I suspected, she said finally. When I started working here, I saw old photos of the senator's family. There was one of his son, taken just before the kidnapping. The resemblance was striking. And you never thought to mention this to me? What was I supposed to say? Hey, honey, I think you might be the missing heir to a political fortune. You would have thought I was crazy. Try me. Evelyn stood up and walked to the window, her back to me. I wasn't sure. And even if I was right, what good would it do? The Morrisons had moved on with their lives. You had a family with the Blackwoods. I thought it was better to leave the past alone. Better for who? She turned around, and for the first time since I'd known her, Evelyn looked vulnerable. For everyone. Jack, do you have any idea what this could mean? If you really are Jonathan Morrison, you're not just heir to a fortune. You're the son of one of the most powerful men in the state. Your life will never be private again. My life was never private. It was just built on lies. I was trying to protect you. Were you? Or were you trying to protect yourself? What's that supposed to mean? I moved closer to her desk, close enough to see the fear in her green eyes. It means that if you've known who I really am, and you've been working at my biological father's law firm for 3 years, then you've had plenty of opportunities to tell the truth. The question is, why didn't you? Evelyn's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and I saw Brent Lockwood's name on the screen. She quickly turned the phone face down. We should go home and discuss this privately, she said. Should we? Because it seems like you have other priorities. Jack, please, not here. But I was already walking toward the door. Tell Brent I said hello. And Evelyn, when you're ready to tell me the whole truth, you know where to find me. As I waited for the elevator, I could hear voices from Evelyn's office, hers and a man's. The walls were thin enough that I could make out a few words. Problem, careful, and too late. The elevator arrived, and as the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Brent Lockwood entering my wife's office. He was moving fast, like a man with urgent business to discuss. I had a feeling that business was me. The black sedan had been following me for 3 blocks. In my rearview mirror, I could see 2 men in the front seat, both wearing dark suits and sunglasses despite the overcast sky. They weren't trying to be subtle. I turned into the parking lot of a grocery store and watched as the sedan drove past, slowing down just enough for the passenger to get a good look at me. Then it disappeared around the corner. My phone rang. Frank. Jack, where are you right now? Hannaford parking lot on Shelburne Road. Why? Get somewhere public and stay there. I just got a very interesting phone call from Senator Morrison's security team. Apparently, someone's been asking questions about you. What kind of questions? The kind that suggests you might be in danger. The senator wants to meet with you. Today. He's flying in from Washington. I looked around the parking lot, suddenly aware of how exposed I was. Frank, there's been a car following me. Crap. Okay, listen carefully. Drive to the Sheraton on the waterfront. Go straight to the bar and order a drink. Act normal. The senator's people will find you there. How will I know them? Trust me, you'll know. 20 minutes later, I was sitting at the Sheraton bar, nursing a beer and trying to look casual while my heart hammered against my ribs. The bar was mostly empty, a few business travelers and a couple of tourists admiring the lake view. Mr. Mallory? I turned to see a woman in her 50s approaching my table. She was elegantly dressed in a navy blue suit with silver hair pulled back in a perfect chignon. Her eyes were the same blue as mine. "I'm Rebecca Morrison," she said softly. "I believe I'm your mother." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I'd imagined this meeting a dozen different ways since Frank's phone call, but nothing had prepared me for the reality of looking into the eyes of the woman who'd given birth to me. "Mrs. Morrison." I stood up awkwardly, not sure whether to shake her hand or hug her. This is overwhelming," she finished with a gentle smile. "I know, it's overwhelming for me, too. I've dreamed of this moment for 29 years. She gestured to the chair across from me. "May I?" We sat in silence for a moment, studying each other. She had tears in her eyes, and I realized that I was close to crying myself. "You look just like your father," she said finally, "especially around the eyes. Even as a little boy, you had his eyes. I don't remember much from before the Blackwoods." "You wouldn't. You were so young." Her voice caught slightly. "We never stopped looking for you, Jonathan. Never stopped hoping. It's Jack now." "Of course, I'm sorry." "Jack." She smiled through her tears. "I like it. It suits you." "Mrs. Morrison." "Rebecca, please." "Rebecca, I need to ask you something. The people who took me, do you know who they were?" Her expression hardened. "We have suspicions. But first, you need to understand something. You're in danger, real danger. There are people who don't want you to reclaim your identity. The Blackwoods, among others." She glanced around the bar, then leaned closer. "Jack, when you disappeared, you weren't just our son. You were the heir to everything we'd built. The foundation, the trust funds, the political legacy. There are people who've spent 29 years believing that inheritance would never be claimed. And now that I'm back, now they're desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Evelyn. "Where are you? We need to talk. It's urgent." I showed the message to Rebecca. She frowned. "Your wife works at our old law firm." "Yes. She says she suspected who I was, but never said anything." "And you believe her?" I thought about Evelyn's reaction at the Blackwood dinner, her secretive phone calls, the way Brent Lockwood had looked at me. I don't know what to believe anymore. Rebecca reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. It showed a young couple with a dark-haired toddler. The man looked like an older version of me, and the woman was clearly a younger Rebecca. "This was taken 2 weeks before you were kidnapped," she said. "You were playing in our backyard, building sand castles in your sandbox. You loved construction vehicles even then. Dump trucks, bulldozers, cranes. You would spend hours making roads and buildings." I stared at the photograph, trying to remember. There was something familiar about the scene, like a half-remembered dream. "The police said there were no signs of forced entry," Rebecca continued. "Whoever took you, you went with them willingly. That suggests you knew them, trusted them. You think the Blackwoods were involved? Harrison Blackwood was a business associate of your father's. They'd met several times at political fundraisers. You might have recognized him." My phone buzzed again. Another text from Evelyn. "Jack, please, come home. I can explain everything." "She's getting desperate," Rebecca observed. "What do you mean?" "If your wife has been keeping your identity secret for 3 years, she had a reason. Now that the truth is coming out, she's losing control of the situation." I thought about Evelyn's behavior over the past few days. The secretive phone calls, the meetings with Brent Lockwood, the way she'd tried to downplay the significance of my adoption. What kind of reason? Rebecca hesitated. "Jack, this is going to be hard to hear, but we think your wife and her colleagues at the law firm have been planning to use your identity for their own benefit." "How?" "By controlling you. If you'd never learned the truth about your parentage, they could have manipulated you into signing over your inheritance rights. Or they could have arranged for you to have an accident before you discovered who you really are." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You're saying my wife wants me dead?" I'm saying your wife works for people who have a lot to lose if you reclaim your birthright. And those people might be willing to do anything to protect their interests. My phone rang. Evelyn, don't answer it, Rebecca said quickly, but I was already sliding the phone across the table. I have to know. Jack, thank God. Where are you? I'm safe. That's all you need to know. Jack, please come home. There are things I need to tell you, things I should have told you years ago. Like the fact that you've known who I really am since we met? There was a long pause. Yes, like that. And the fact that you've been working with Brent Lockwood to keep me from finding out the truth? Another pause, longer this time. Jack, it's not what you think. Then explain it to me. Not over the phone. Come home. Please. I looked at Rebecca, who was shaking her head urgently. I'll call you back, I said, and hung up. She's lying, Rebecca said immediately. Whatever she tells you, she's lying. How can you be so sure? Because 3 days ago, someone contacted the Blackwood family and warned them that you were investigating your adoption. Someone who knew you'd hired a private investigator. Someone who had access to information about your activities. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. Evelyn, we think so, yes. I stared at my phone, thinking about all the conversations I'd had with Evelyn over the past few days. I'd told her about hiring Frank, about the hospital records, about the DNA test. And somehow that information had made its way back to the people who'd stolen me from my family 29 years ago. She's been feeding them information, I said. We believe so. The question is, what are they planning to do with it? As if in answer to her question, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging into the past, or you'll end up buried in it. Rebecca saw the message and went pale. We need to get you somewhere safe, now. Where? Your father's waiting at a secure location. He's been planning for this day for 29 years. I looked around the bar, suddenly aware that we might be being watched. The business travelers, the tourists, even the bartender. Any of them could be working for the people who wanted me dead. What about Evelyn? What about her? I can't just disappear. She's my wife. Rebecca's expression softened. Jack, I know this is hard, but your wife has been lying to you for 3 years. She's been working with the people who stole you from us. Whatever you thought you had with her, it wasn't real. I knew she was right. Deep down, I'd known it since the moment Evelyn had looked up from her phone at the Blackwood dinner. But knowing and accepting were two different things. Let's go, I said. As we left the bar, I caught a glimpse of the black sedan in the parking lot. The 2 men in suits were still inside, watching. Rebecca noticed them, too. This way, she said, leading me toward a different exit. We slipped out through the hotel's back entrance, where a silver Mercedes was waiting with the engine running. As we drove away, I saw the black sedan trying to follow us through traffic. But we were already gone, disappearing into the maze of Burlington's side streets like ghosts from the past finally coming home. Senator William Morrison looked exactly like I would in 30 years. Same build, same jawline, same intense blue eyes that seemed to see everything. We were sitting in a secure conference room at a private airfield outside Burlington, surrounded by men who looked like Secret Service agents. Son, he said, and the word carried 29 years of grief and hope. Senator Morrison, Bill, please. We have a lot of catching up to do, but first we need to deal with the immediate threat. He slid a manila folder across the table. These are surveillance photos taken over the past 3 days. I opened the folder and felt my stomach drop. The photos showed me at various locations around Burlington, leaving Frank's office, sitting in my truck outside my house, walking into the law firm. But they also showed Evelyn meeting with Harrison Blackwood at a restaurant downtown, Brent Lockwood handing her a thick envelope, and my adoptive siblings gathered around what looked like architectural plans. They're planning something, I said. We know. Our security team has been monitoring their communications since you first contacted the private investigator. Bill pulled out another folder. This is what we've learned. The second folder contained financial records, legal documents, and transcripts of phone conversations. As I read through them, the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. The Blackwoods hadn't just adopted me. They'd been paid to take me. $200,000 in 1994, deposited into Harrison's business account from a shell company owned by Morrison, Lockwood and Associates, but not the Morrison part of the firm, the Lockwood part. Brent Lockwood's father arranged the kidnapping, I asked. Brent Lockwood Sr., yes. He was my law partner and my closest friend. I trusted him completely. Bill's voice was bitter. When you disappeared, he was the one who organized the search efforts, who coordinated with the police, who comforted your mother and me, all while knowing exactly where you were. Why? Money and power. If you were gone, the Morrison Family Trust would eventually revert to the law firm. $50 million in 1994, worth about $200 million today. I thought about Brent Lockwood Jr. with his smooth smile and expensive suits. And his son has been managing the trust for the past 5 years, collecting substantial fees and making investment decisions. If you return and claim your inheritance, he loses everything. What about Evelyn? Rebecca, who had been silent until now, spoke up. We think she was recruited specifically to marry you. Her law school transcripts show she was failing out until suddenly, in her final year, she received a full scholarship from the Lockwood Foundation. She graduated summa cum laude and was immediately hired by the firm. The timeline made sickening sense. Evelyn and I had met 6 years ago at a charity event, an event I now realized that had been sponsored by Morrison, Lockwood and Associates. She'd approached me, started the conversation, asked me out. I'd thought I was the luckiest guy in the world. She was assigned to keep tabs on me, I said, and to make sure you never discovered the truth about your identity, Bill confirmed. As long as you remained Jack Mallory, adopted son of the Blackwoods, the trust money was safe. But now that I know, now you're a threat that needs to be eliminated. One of the security agents, a stern-faced woman named Agent Torres, leaned forward. Mr. Mallory, we have reason to believe they're planning to move against you tonight. Phone intercepts suggest they want to stage your death as an accident. What kind of accident? Construction site mishap. You work dangerous jobs, use heavy equipment. It wouldn't be hard to arrange. I thought about my crew, good men who trusted me to keep them safe. What about my workers? They'll be fine. This isn't about them. Bill reached across the table and put his hand on my shoulder. Jack, I know this is overwhelming, but we need to act fast. We can put you in protective custody until we can build a case against the Lockwoods and the Blackwoods. How long would that take? Months, maybe years. These are powerful people with expensive lawyers. I shook my head. I'm not hiding. I've been running from the truth my whole life without knowing it. I'm done running. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we give them what they want. Let them think they're in control. Agent Torres frowned. That's extremely dangerous. So is letting them get away with kidnapping and conspiracy to commit homicide. I looked around the table at my biological parents and their security team. They want Jack Mallory dead? Fine, let's end him. Jack, Rebecca started. Not literally. But we can make them think they've succeeded. Then, when they're celebrating, we can expose everything. Bill studied me for a long moment. You're talking about a complex undercover operation. It would require precise timing and coordination. And if something goes wrong, you could end up actually dead, Agent Torres added. If I do nothing, I'm dead anyway. At least this way, I go down fighting. There was silence in the room as everyone considered the proposal. Finally, Bill nodded. What did you have in mind? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Mike Rodriguez, my foreman. Mike's worked with me for 5 years. He's solid, trustworthy. If anyone can help us stage a convincing accident, it's him. And then what? Then we watch them celebrate. We record their confessions. And we make sure they pay for what they did to our family. Rebecca looked worried. Jack, these people have already proven they're willing to end. If they discover you're still alive, then I guess I better make sure they don't find out until it's too late. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the tarmac where Bill's private jet was waiting. 24 hours ago, I'd been a contractor with a failing marriage and a family that didn't want me. Now I was the heir to a political dynasty planning to fake my own death to catch the people who'd stolen my life. There's something else, I said, turning back to the group. I want to confront Evelyn first. I want to hear her admit what she's done. That's not safe, Agent Torres protested. Maybe not. But I need to know if any part of our marriage was real. I need to know if she ever loved me, or if it was all just an assignment. Bill and Rebecca exchanged glances. If we do this, Bill said, we do it right. Full surveillance, backup teams, emergency extraction plans. Agreed. And Jack, once we start this, there's no going back. You'll be Jonathan Morrison again, heir to everything your mother and I built. Your life as Jack Mallory will be over. I thought about my modest house, my construction business, my simple life. Then I thought about 29 years of lies, about the family I'd lost, about the people who'd stolen everything from me. Jack Mallory was never real anyway, I said. It's time to find out who Jonathan Morrison really is. As we began planning the operation that would either expose the conspiracy or get me ended, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: purpose. For the first time in my life, I knew exactly who I was and what I had to do. The only question was whether I'd survive long enough to see justice done. I walked into my house at 8 o'clock that evening, knowing it would probably be the last time I'd ever cross that threshold as Jack Mallory. The surveillance van was parked 3 blocks away, and Agent Torres was monitoring everything through the wire I was wearing. Evelyn was waiting for me in the living room, dressed in the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. She'd made dinner, my favorite, lasagna, and opened a bottle of wine. If I hadn't known better, I might have thought she was trying to seduce me. Instead, I knew she was trying to end me. "Jack, thank God you're home." She stood up and moved toward me, but I held up a hand to stop her. Just don't. "Jack, please, let me explain." "Go ahead. Explain how you've been lying to me for 6 years. Explain how you married me as part of a job assignment. Explain how you've been planning to have me eliminated." Her face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "I know everything, Evelyn. I know about the Lockwoods, the kidnapping, the trust fund. I know about the payments to the Blackwoods. I know about the surveillance photos and the staged accident you're planning." She sank back onto the couch, her composure finally cracking. "How? Does it matter? The question is, was any of it real? Did you ever love me, or was I just another case file?" Tears started running down her cheeks. "Jack, you have to understand. When I first met you, it was an assignment. Brent asked me to get close to you, to monitor your activities, to make sure you never started asking questions about your past. And you said yes. I needed the job. I was drowning in student loans, failing out of law school. The Lockwood scholarship saved my life, so you destroyed mine." "No, that's not how it was. Yes, it started as an assignment. But Jack, I fell in love with you, really, truly in love. These past 6 years have been the happiest of my life." I wanted to believe her. God help me, part of me still wanted to believe that something good had come out of all the lies and manipulation. "If you loved me, why didn't you tell me the truth?" "Because I knew what would happen. I knew that once you found out who you really were, you'd leave me. You'd go back to your real family, your real life. I'd lose everything. So instead, you decided to have me ended?" "No!" She stood up, reaching for me again. "Jack, I swear to you, I never agreed to that. When Brent told me what they were planning, I told him I wouldn't be part of it. But you didn't try to stop it either. I didn't know how. These are powerful people, Jack. They don't take no for an answer." My phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Time's up." Through the window, I could see headlights turning into our driveway. 2 cars, moving slowly, deliberately. "They're here," I said. Evelyn's eyes widened with fear. "Jack, we have to go now." "Why? This is what you wanted, isn't it?" "No, I told you, I never wanted this. I tried to warn you, tried to get you to leave town." "When?" "The text messages, the phone calls. I was trying to get you to run without telling you why." I thought back to her urgent messages, her pleas for me to come home. Had she been trying to save me, or was this just another lie? The front door opened. Brent Lockwood walked in, followed by Harrison Blackwood and 2 men I didn't recognize. They were all wearing gloves. "Jack," Brent said with his smooth lawyer's smile, "I'm sorry it's come to this. Are you? Because you seem pretty comfortable with the idea of eliminating your business partner's son." "You're not his son. You're a complication that needs to be resolved." Harrison stepped forward. "Jack, you have to understand. When we took you in, we thought we were doing the right thing. Your biological parents were grieving, distracted. We thought we could give you a better life. By stealing me from my family, by saving you from a life of political pressure and public scrutiny. Look how you turned out. Successful, independent, happy. Would you have had that as Jonathan Morrison? I guess we'll never know, will we?" One of the unknown men moved toward the kitchen, probably to check for other exits. The other positioned himself near the front door. "Here's what's going to happen," Brent said. "You're going to have a terrible accident at your construction site tonight. Tragic, really. A young man cut down in his prime. And what about Evelyn? Evelyn will be devastated, of course. The grieving widow. She'll need time to recover. Maybe a long vacation somewhere warm." I looked at my wife, trying to read her expression. She looked terrified. But was it fear for me or fear of being caught? What if I refuse to cooperate? Brent shrugged. Then you'll have an accident right here. House fire, maybe? These old places are fire traps. You'd end your own employee? Evelyn knew the risks when she took this assignment. That answered my question. She wasn't part of the homicide plot. She was another loose end that they planned to tie up. You son of a witch! I said, and launched myself at Brent. I caught him off guard, driving my shoulder into his chest and sending him crashing into the coffee table. The wine bottle shattered, and Evelyn screamed. Harrison shouted something, and the two unknown men moved toward me. But I was already rolling away, grabbing a poker from the fireplace. Stay back! I swung the poker in a wide arc, keeping them at a distance. I said, stay back! Jack, stop! Evelyn was crying now. Please, just stop! Why? So they can end us both? Because there are more of them outside, she said quietly. Through the window, I could see more men surrounding the house. At least 6, maybe 8. All armed. I was outnumbered, outmatched, and trapped. But I wasn't giving up without a fight. You want me dead? I said, backing toward the kitchen. Come and get me. I threw the poker at the nearest man and ran for the back door. Behind me, I could hear shouting, footsteps, Evelyn screaming my name. I burst through the back door and into the yard, sprinting toward the tree line. If I could make it to the woods, I might have a chance. But I'd only made it halfway across the yard when I heard the crack. The impact caught me in the shoulder, spinning me around and sending me crashing to the ground. Pain exploded through my body, and I could feel warmth soaking through my shirt. Don't end him yet, I heard Harrison call out. We need it to look like an accident. Hands grabbed me, hauling me to my feet. My shoulder felt like it was on fire, and I could barely stay conscious. Load him in the truck, Brent ordered. We'll finish this at the construction site. As they dragged me toward a black SUV, I caught a glimpse of Evelyn in the doorway. She was still crying, still reaching toward me. I'm sorry, she mouthed. I'm so sorry. Then they threw me in the back of the SUV and everything went dark. When I woke up, I was lying on a pile of lumber at my own construction site. My shoulder was bandaged. They'd stopped the flow, but hadn't bothered with proper medical care. Around me, I could see the half-built house, the heavy equipment, the tools of my trade, the tools they were planning to use to end me. Ah, you're awake? Brent said. He was standing near a cement mixer, examining it like he was considering a purchase. Good. I want you to be conscious for this. Conscious for what? Your accident. You see, Jack, construction sites are dangerous places. Heavy equipment, unstable structures, deep excavations. Accidents happen all the time. I tried to sit up, but the pain in my shoulder made me dizzy. The police will investigate. Of course they will. And they'll find exactly what we want them to find. A tragic accident caused by worker negligence. You were here alone, working late, trying to make up for lost time. The scaffolding collapsed, or maybe you fell into the foundation pit. These things happen. People will ask questions. What people? Your adoptive family has already disowned you. Your wife will be too grief-stricken to think clearly. Your workers will assume you made a mistake. Harrison appeared beside him, looking uncomfortable, but determined. Jack, I want you to know this isn't personal. You're a good man, a hard worker, but you're also a threat to everything we've built. Everything you've stolen, you mean. Call it what you want. The fact remains, you can't be allowed to reclaim your inheritance. I looked around the construction site, trying to find some way to escape or fight back, but with my injured shoulder and at least 6 armed men surrounding me, my options were limited. That's when I heard the helicopters. The sound started as a distant whir, then grew louder and more distinct. Multiple aircraft, moving feet. Brent frowned, looking up at the sky. What the heck? Suddenly, the construction site was flooded with light. Helicopters circled overhead while black SUVs poured through the gates. Men in tactical gear swarmed the area, shouting orders and pointing tools. FBI! Everyone on the ground, now! For a moment, nobody moved. Then Harrison raised his hands and slowly knelt down. One by one, the others followed suit. Agent Torres appeared beside me, cutting the ropes that bound my hands. You okay, Mr. Morrison? I've been better, but I'm alive. That's what matters. We got everything on tape. The confessions, the conspiracy, the attempted homicide. They're all going down. As the FBI agents arrested Brent, Harrison, and their associates, I saw another familiar figure approaching. Senator William Morrison, my father, was walking across the construction site with Rebecca beside him. "Son," he said, kneeling down next to me, "are you all right?" "I think so. How did you know where to find me?" "The tracking device in your wire. When they moved you here, we followed." "What about Evelyn?" "She's safe, and she's talking. Turns out she's been recording conversations with Brent for months, trying to build a case against him. She really was trying to protect you." I closed my eyes, feeling a mixture of relief and exhaustion. It was over. Finally, after 29 years, it was over. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you come home," Rebecca said, taking my good hand in hers. "You come home to your real family." As the paramedics loaded me into an ambulance, I took one last look at the construction site where I'd almost died. Tomorrow, I would be Jonathan Morrison, heir to a political dynasty and a fortune I'd never asked for. But tonight, I was just Jack Mallory, a man who'd finally learned the truth about his life and lived to tell about it. The ambulance doors closed, and we drove away into the night, leaving the lies and betrayals behind us forever. 3 months later, I stood in a federal courtroom and watched as Brent Lockwood was sentenced to 25 years in prison for conspiracy, kidnapping, and attempted homicide. Harrison and Margaret Blackwood received 15 years each. Their biological children, who had been unaware of the kidnapping but had participated in the cover-up, received probation and community service. Evelyn testified against all of them, providing crucial evidence that sealed their convictions. She was granted immunity in exchange for her cooperation, but she lost her law license and her career. The last time I saw her, she was leaving Burlington, starting over somewhere new. I never found out if she really loved me. Maybe it didn't matter anymore. As for me, I kept the construction business, but hired managers to run it. I had other responsibilities now: the Morrison Foundation, the family trust, the political legacy I'd inherited along with my name. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I'd been born to live. And for the first time in 32 years, it was a life built on truth instead of lies. Standing outside the courthouse, with my biological parents beside me and the media cameras recording every moment, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The betrayals, the revelations, the near-death experience that had finally set me free. Jack Mallory was dead, just as Brent Lockwood had planned. But Jonathan Morrison was very much alive, and he had a lot of work to do. Justice had been served, the truth had been revealed, and the people who had stolen my life were finally paying the price. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.